Let's talk Tanya for the 9th of Sivan of a leap year. In yesterday's Tanya, we talked about the logic behind perpetual creation. How it's illogical to say that God created the world once and then, so to say, he withdrew because the world just exists. By now we understand it doesn't work that way. It requires a constant infusion of divine energy in this world in order to keep it in existence. And what is this divine energy which is being infused in the world at every moment? This, as we discussed already in the first chapter of Sharichut Vamuna, these are the 10 utterances with which God created the world, which God keeps on uttering, and these words are the code which keep on giving energy, life, and existence to the worlds. The Alter Rebbe says this is actually alluded to in a verse that says, "V'ata mechaya es kulam," which in Hebrew is, "And you, O God, you give life to everything, to all of creation." Now the words ata, we say you, which is ata, but the word ata is aleph, taf, hey. So the first two letters is how is it that you give life and energy to everything? Is using the letters of aleph through taf, meaning all of the letters of the aleph base, and then the hey at the end, because we know there are 5 different groupings of letters. There are 5 different organs that produce letters. This is something we'll be talking about further on in Sharichut Vamuna. There's the lips, and there's the tongue, and there's the palate, and there's the throat, and there's the teeth. So God, by way of the 5 different types, groupings of letters, the letters aleph through taf, that is what gives energy and existence to all of creation. With this, we understand just how dependent at every single moment all of creation is on God. So, for example, if someone were to ask, let's say God, something in creation lost favor in his eyes. He didn't want he decided, I created that animal, that stone, that fish, I don't know. You know what? I find it unnecessary. I don't need it. What would God do? How would God get rid of it? So you might think, God can send a fire and burn it, or God might destroy it in some other way, or God might orchestrate this big accident to happen. But by now we understand that that's a ludicrous way of thinking. If God doesn't want something to exist, it doesn't exist. Every single object is in existence at every moment only because God wants it to exist and God is forcing it into existence. So we can't say, that God really doesn't like that. Maybe he just didn't get around yet to getting rid of it. There's no such thing. Everything that exists, when we look around us, every object, every event, every phenomenon, by definition, it must be from God, and every detail of it must be from God because God is creating it at this very moment. Which also explains the idea of hashgacha pratis. It's not only that there's divine providence, but the providence is also in the details. There's a famous example of the Baal Shem Tov. He says that when you go into a forest and you see that there's a leaf that gets blown off a tree by the wind, and it goes and it blows across a meadow. The amount of times that it turns around in the wind, that also is by divine providence. It's a very deep idea over here. When there's a storm and there's winds, we all understand, God made that storm. What's the reason why God made that storm? He had some sort of reason. I don't know, maybe there's a certain field that needed to be watered so something should grow. There's some important reason for the storm. Now, once there's a storm, obviously there's collateral damage. What's going to happen is there's a leaf that's going to fall off a tree and it's going to roll. But that's not God's intention. God's intention is the larger concept of the storm and whatever purpose he had in mind for that. But once we understand hashgacha pratis, divine providence, we have to realize it's not only that God is creating and orchestrating the storm, but this very leaf is being recreated by God at every single moment. So at one moment, this leaf is being recreated by God on the tree. The next moment it falls. The next moment it's rolling around. Every single one of those stages and movements is being orchestrated by God. It must be so because this leaf is being recreated every moment. And this is a larger understanding of life. It's not only that God has intention in a larger sense, but also every single detail of every single event is also orchestrated by God, and there's purpose in that also. So, we finished talking about the basics of perpetual creation. We spoke about how that relates to hashgacha pratis, divine providence. How does this all relate to the larger topic of this section of Tanya, which is God's unity? That's a conversation we will start, God willing, in tomorrow's Tanya.